participants in webinar mode. That's what she just wrote.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. There we go.
You might want to remind people to mute themselves.
Oh, no, they're good. They're automatically muted. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is JC, and we'll get started here in just a second.
I'm getting music in the background, though.
What's that?
I'm hearing music in the background?
Yeah, I'm playing it. No worries. Good morning, buenos dias. We'll just give a couple of minutes for everybody to file in and get situated. Don't rush. If you need to go get that cup of coffee, you have time. Buenos días a todos. Gracias por estar aquí esta mañana. Si necesitan agarrar una taza de café, por favor, con confianza. Necesitan de interpretación simultánea el día de hoy, pueden pasar a eso. Aquí tenemos la información para conectarse con el intérprete. Right. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. My name is JC Cortez, and I am the Director of Training and Development here at Synergia's Metropolitan Parent Center. Before we get started, we wanted to let you know that we are broadcasting today's event live via our Facebook page and want to give a warm welcome to those of you joining us from there. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section, which we'll be monitoring throughout this presentation. Also to let you know, we are recording this session and a link will be sent to you in a follow-up email within 48 hours. Just a few words on who Synergia, a few words on who Synergia is. Synergia is a multi-service agency located in Manhattan that has been supporting New Yorkers with disabilities and their families for more than 40 years. We offer a rich source of information and training tailored for parents, including parents whose primary language is not English, or who they themselves have special training needs. We help them participate more effectively in their children's education and development, and we partner with professionals and policymakers to improve outcomes for all children with disabilities. Synergia, which is Spanish for synergy, is one of the 3 federally funded parent centers committed to serving people with disabilities and their families with an added focus on communities of color and economically disadvantaged. We create innovative programs ranging from transitional housing for homeless families with children with disabilities to parenting classes for adults with intellectual disabilities and parenting and education advocacy training for parents and of children with disabilities. A few housekeeping notes for you. We are recording this and the PowerPoint that will be presented will be shared with you in a follow-up email. Please ask questions at any time. Try and save at least some for after we explain the process, but please hold on to those and ask away. We want you to ask every question. And if we haven't answered it to your satisfaction, please ask it again because we want you to leave with as many answers about this important process and how it can be of value to you. We ask also that if you have any case-specific questions with very high detail about your case or someone else's, that for the sake of privacy, just feel free to reach out to either Synergia, myself, or the presenter. We will share that information in the follow-up email for those of you attending, so thank you. Lastly, an important note, we are not lawyers and this is not legal advice, so please, if you have any questions or want to act on it, please consult with a legal representative or somebody who is well-versed in this. Now I want to get to our presenter today. We are happy to be joined by Joan Cornacchio, who is the New York City Site Coordinator for Supported Decision Making New York. And we're absolutely happy to have you with us today, Joan. Joan has been an advocate and private consultant to families of students with intellectual and developmental disabilities and autism in New York and Massachusetts, helping students to access and navigate resources and services through their local school districts. She served as the director of the Berkshire Hills Music Academy Summer Program in South Hadley, Massachusetts, where she developed and supervised programming for young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in a residential setting. Joan has also enjoyed a long career as a music educator and program director in both mainstream and adaptive settings. She views music as a pathway for awareness and acceptance of disability as diversity. Having directed inclusive choirs for young people in performances and showcases, she also holds a Master of Science in Education from Syracuse University with a concentration in disability studies. As a mother of 2 children, including a young adult with a developmental disability, she has witnessed firsthand the viability of supported decision-making as an alternative to guardianship. Joan, thank you so much for being here. Let me stop sharing so you can share yours. But thank you for being here. We have so many questions for you, and I hope you can answer for us today while we're together. Last note, we will take a break in about 45 minutes, just a quick 5-minute break so we can give our interpreter a break as well, because that takes some effort as well. But yes, thank you for being here. And hello, please use the chat. Good morning. Yes, I see it. Right.
Thanks so very much, JC. I'm really delighted to be here and excited to get started. I'm sharing the screen and I'm trying to get into full view right now, and I'm not sure why that's not happening. Play from the start. Maybe there we go.
There we go.
All right, there we are. Okay, so thanks for that lovely introduction. I'm delighted to be here today, and I'd like to get right to it so that I do have some time to answer some of your questions at the end and tell you a little bit about who we are and what we are about. Some of you might be familiar with supported decision-making. I'm going to make an assumption that many of you are not as familiar, so I'm going to give a quick overview of what it is, where it comes from, and how it relates to guardianship as an alternative to guardianship. So we, SDMA, Supported Decision Making New York, is a recipient of a 5-year grant from the New York State Developmental Disability Planning Council. The grant actually ended in March 2021. We were fortunate enough to receive a grant from the Ford Foundation. They gave the largest disability grant ever, frankly, as well as from the Taft Foundation and the FAR Fund, to continue our work in what we're calling our bridge year, or our 6th year, that began on April 1st, ending at the end of next March. And during this year, we're really working extremely hard to make a push for legislation for supported decision-making. More on that a little bit later, but just that's kind of an overview. I have been with the project since more or less the beginning, from 2016. And so I'm helped to develop the training materials for facilitators that have worked with, you'll hear these words a lot today, decision makers. Decision makers are the participants with developmental and intellectual disabilities who choose to participate in the pilot project and go through a supported decision-making facilitation process. So I've worked as a facilitator. I've also mentored other facilitators, and I'm the site coordinator for all of New York City. So, of course, many of you are familiar with guardianship. We know that guardianship is very often the default position that, that is taken by medical providers. Certainly parents hear about guardianship when their child is aging out at 18 and going into those critical transition years from 18 to 21, whereby parents are led to believe that guardianship is the way to go. And the process of guardianship, as it says here, is the legal process by which the right and power to make decisions and enter into legal relationships is really taken away from the person because of his or her alleged incapacity and given instead to another called the guardian. Why are we not moving forward? There we go. So supported decision-making, or SDM, is an alternative to guardianship. And SDM is a process whereby people of all kinds never lose their important rights. For example, to enter into contract, to vote. And I'll just stop right there, because what comes up for me is people don't, depending on where one lives in the country or in what state, a guardian can prohibit a ward or a person without their rights to vote. So that is a real thing. To work or to marry. So those important rights are taken away. The guardian makes the choices for the individual. SDM allows a person to take some risks, right? We call it the dignity of risk, and to make some bad choices and make some bad decisions, which any of us have made. I am going to shut my phone off because it keeps going on me. So if you think of yourselves, I don't think there's anyone on this webinar today that could actually say they've never made a bad decision. I've made plenty. I will continue to make plenty of bad choices and hopefully learn from those mistakes. SDM really is a wonderful process because the idea is that there's actually more eyes and ears on the person than there would normally be under a guardianship order, because the individual chooses various supporters to assist in different areas. So say you have an expertise in financial decision-making. The decision maker might choose you to be part of the process whereby you would help out in that area, okay? Someone with expertise in the medical field might be chosen as a supporter. A dear cousin who's really good with interpersonal relationships and has a really high emotional intelligence might be an individual that would be a great supporter for an individual with a disability for building friendships or counseling on having intimate relationships, okay? So the idea is that there's more of a network. And importantly, the last bullet here, people have a human right to make their own decisions. So not to get too deep into this, but the work of supported decision-making does come out of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, known as the CRPD. And the statute says that states parties, I'm not going to quote it exactly, I'm going to paraphrase, but if you're interested in looking this up, you can actually look up the UN Convention and learn some about how the CRPD does not qualify disability, does not talk about capacity, nor do we. We're not interested in diagnosis, we're not interested in capacity. Anyone who chooses to do this, wants to be a decision maker, can express their will and preferences, whether verbally or non-verbally, because we have had folks who are non-verbal, can participate in supported decision making. Okay, so what exactly is supported decision making? It's a series of, so this is a very kind of academic definition, and I have another definition a little bit later, or actually in the next slide. So this is by Bob Dinnerstein, who's a disability professor and lawyer at American University. And he says supported decision-making is a series of relationships, practices, arrangements, and agreements of more or less formality and intensity designed to assist an individual with a disability to make and communicate to others decisions about the individual's life. Now that's a bit of a mouthful, but if you start to think about how we all have relationships with individuals and we shoot the breeze with people or say, well, what do you think about this idea? Or in my case, I had a knee replacement surgery a couple of months ago. I use that example a lot in my meetings with decision makers because it's a real life thing. We talk about, was that a hard decision or an easy decision? Who do you think I talked to about that? Do you think I got opinions of more than one doctor? So on and so forth. So you can all think about decisions you have made, large and small, and who you've incorporated into your life as you've made those decisions. And I would bet that some of those people are not just professionals, as in my case, doctors or physical therapists, but also, friends and family, etc. Anyway, so we all do this. For many individuals without disabilities, perhaps we have more natural supports in our lives. And the idea is to help the individual. I'm going to call that person the decision maker. I'm just going to use that term from now on. Decision maker is the individual with a disability who would be the participant in supported decision making. So decision maker, sometimes we say DM for short. So the DM is encouraged to look in their environment and think about trusted people who might want to become a supporter for the decision maker in various areas of their lives. So again, we all have relationships and agreements with different folks. We use them for helping with decision making. So here's a little simpler idea, supported decision making definition rather. SDM is a way that people with intellectual developmental disabilities, or IDD, like all individuals, like all people, can get help from other people, from people that they trust, in order to make choices about their lives. It's a relatively new concept that can help people with IDD enjoy their basic human right to make their own decisions. So again, I'm just sort of highlighting that this really is a human right. Where does it come from? Well, supported decision making, again, it comes from our common experience of how everyone makes decisions. I've already given you a couple of examples of that. And again, the human right of every person to make her or his own decisions, regardless of the disability or learning challenge. So interestingly, when my daughter was graduating or exiting high school when she was 18, we were living in Massachusetts at the time. And on her IEP, her individualized education program, there was a box that could be checked for shared decision making, which was really a cool thing. We talked about, would it be guardianship? Pardon me, would she be making decisions for herself, or would we be sharing decision making? So that was, that was kind of my introduction to what supported decision making was all about. And we have done it, she's in her late 20s now, we've done it more or less for the last decade, informally. There wasn't a process or a program back then in 2012, 2010, I guess, for her to engage in a process. But over the course of the years, she's made some decisions for herself. There are other decisions that she leaves up to me or others, that, bigger decisions that she doesn't want to get involved in. I'm her rep payee, for example, for Social Security, but she does maintain her own checking account for other things. And her life, her brother actually helps her as a supporter for her financial decisions, and helps her to look at her budgetary needs and make decisions about how she's spending her money. Does she overspend? Yes. Does she run out of money? Yes. Do I rescue her every time? No. It's part of the learning process for her. We all use supports, right? So think about when you make an important decision. Again, I'm just highlighting this. So I want you to start thinking not about your loved one with a disability. I want you to take that lens away, and I want you to really think about all of us, or yourself, people you love, your child, the loved one that you're probably either participating for to get information, or hopefully there are some folks here, perhaps from the ITP program at Synergia, who might be interested in participating in this process. How do you make important decisions, right? You're not going to make them in general by yourself, right? Do you do your research? Do you get some help for that research? So again, highlighting that people with IDD may just need more or different kinds of support. I want to get to the heart of, in a little bit of time that we have today, the heart of what SDMNY is about. We've developed something called the Big Four. And we're going to talk a lot about this today. So the Big Four are: which areas does the decision maker want to receive support in? Who's going to do the supporting? Who will the decision maker choose as supporters? What kinds of support does he or she want to receive for those areas? And how's that support going to happen? Okay, so which areas? Everything from money management to relationships. Who the supporters will be. what kinds of support. I'm going to get into detail with the kinds of support because that's really important. And the how. How is really about the logistics. Are we going to meet regularly over coffee? Are you going to Zoom your best cousin in California who's one of your supporters? By the way, people choose supporters from all over. I have folks in New York that I have facilitated. One young man has cousins in Argentina, and he has several supporters there, and they Zoom regularly. So these are, I'm just highlighting now the kinds of support, the steps in decision making. We found that going through this process, it's really important to do something we call mapping of decision making. And to really talk about, these are really the 7 major kinds of ways in which all of us make decisions. We might not use them all of the time, but in general, I'm using we, in the general sense, would probably need to gather some necessary information, right? Do the research, understand the information that you are researching, understand and identify the possibilities and alternatives, consider the consequences, both negative and positive consequences. Pardon me 1 second. I've become allergic to something and I can't figure it out. Excuse me.
No worries, Joan. Have your sip. But
thank you.
To quip in,
Sure, go ahead.
The ITP program that Joan is referring to is the integrated transition program that we have here at Synergia, which focuses on creating a safer space for adolescents to talk and engage and socialize, because as we know, one of the bigger challenges with intellectual and developmental disabilities is socializing. So it offers a safe space for that, and it also is supervised by a behavior specialist. So it allows them to organically have conversations and socialize in a safe setting, a supervised setting that also has parent engagement behind it. So that's the program that the ITP program that we have here at Synergia. And yes, I think those participants would be ideal for something like this in most cases, but I mean, it's certainly a decision one has to make on their own. So go ahead, Joan. I just wanted to give some context.
Great, there. Thank you so much. So you've all had a chance also to take a look at this screen to see the slides here. I want to show you now how we've actually broken down these kinds of decision making into various. Why do we not want to move forward? There we go. Various slides. I get my best ideas from other facilitators that I've mentored. So I've taken one of the facilitators that's been trained in SDMA made a beautiful PowerPoint presentation for her decision maker and put each of the decision making types on different slides. So breaking it down, having a chance to really think about each one. So gathering information, right? Doing the research. Some people are really good at doing their own research. Other people want support. I was talking to a decision maker just the other day in a meeting, somebody I'm facilitating currently. And he said to me, well, yeah, this person actually has autism, actually refers to himself as an autistic. And he said, not everything you read on the internet is going to be true, and there could be biases, and I might want some support from people to figure out what information is going to be valuable. So, I hadn't had anybody say that to me before, and I thought, yeah, you're absolutely right. So understanding what that information involves in the research that you're reading, because it also can be overwhelming. What search engines are you using? What are your sources? Understanding the information. So these work really, really well with our decision makers, weighing the choices, thinking about your consequences, choosing among the options, right? I've done this with my neurotypical kid who's in his early 30s, by the way. He recently, when I present, I like to give examples because I think it paints pictures for folks and starts you thinking about how you're also a decision maker. And my son was having some challenges in terms of thinking about different job opportunities. And I said to him, well, have you thought about your options? We started mapping. This was over the phone, and he was in a receptive place. And because I wasn't giving advice, I wasn't doing the mom thing, he was really able to listen. And I found at the end of the conversation, like there was this great sense of relief in his voice of, oh, wow, I can think about this in a lot of different ways. So that was in real life, in real time that we did this. Tell others about my decision, that's also a big piece of it. And for a decision maker, that can be a very big thing, actually articulating in whatever way, communicating verbally, non-verbally, this is what I want to do, right? And then doing what I decided. It's very empowering concepts here. So we call this mapping the decision making. So if I were doing a session, and I'm sort of hoping there are some folks on the line that might be interested in being participants, I would do a whole session on talking about what decisions are easy and hard for you, right? So we would brainstorm, right? Easy decisions, a vending machine, choosing your options. But as you can see in this one, I like this example because the first response might be, well, that's a vending machine. I've used those. I know how to do it. I put the money in, I punch the things, and oh, there's nothing there. Yeah, exactly. How are you going to choose? Suppose, oh, well, that might be Coke. And I'll say, okay, well, maybe it's orange soda. You don't know. How about if I make the choice for you? No, I don't want you to make the choice for me. I want to make my own choice. So starting with things like that to the tougher decisions, right? Money management, financial, health decisions, housing, different options, different things. Most parents, and I would not be surprised if there were some questions already coming through about medical and financial decisions. Those are the biggies for people. So getting right to, so which areas we talked a little bit about. We talked about the kinds of support, the mapping of different kinds of support. When we talk to decision makers about choosing supporters, who are those people? Well, you want them to be people that you find easy to talk to, knows what to do, is competent in particular ways, is a good listener. I think number 4 is real important, makes time to talk and listen, and obviously is a trustworthy person. Another quick story. I had a decision maker who wanted to choose, when it came time to actually go through and think about who was going to be, who her supporters were going to be. She wanted to choose her bus driver, the person who took her back and forth to school. And my first reaction, I won't lie, was, why is she choosing her bus driver? Wow, that's really interesting. That person's not going to want to sign a supported decision-making agreement, I don't think. And then I kind of took a beat and I thought, well, wait a minute, why is she bringing this person up? So I put my facilitator hat right back on. And I asked her, I said, so Anna, what is it about your bus driver that you like? Why do you think this person would be a good supporter? So we really got to talking about the qualities of this person. This person was very kind. This person was very easy to talk to. This person was a good listener. This person was very trustworthy. And so then I got a little more specific and said, so where do you think your bus driver would be a supporter for you, right? Your bus driver already is reliable, right? And trustworthy because he picks you up every day and takes you to school. Are there other areas you think your bus driver would be a good supporter for? No, not really, right? So we went on from there. In other words, this process of thinking about people, we all tend to, with our hearts, go with, I really like that person. And then kind of, digging down a few layers and finding out, well, what is it that you like about that person? And are those then qualities that you would want to think about for choosing a supporter that would actually be willing to take on the roles and responsibilities of a true supporter? Okay. I know I haven't talked a lot about the actual agreement yet. We'll talk about that, getting to the agreement, the supported decision-making agreement, that is. So now I'm going to get a little bit into what the facilitation process actually involves. We have 3 phases in supported decision-making we have developed for our process here in New York, okay? So you've already heard about the big 4. Phase 1 is a process that takes place between the trained facilitator who's been assigned to the decision maker. Just involves those two people. Does not involve parents. It involves the decision maker and the facilitator. They spend a number of meetings getting to know each other, establishing a rapport, building up trust. Think about your child going to school and having relationships with various teachers, right? You're not going to, in general, unless you're homeschooling your child, in general, you're not in school with your child. Pardon me, I know there obviously are exceptions to that. So that period of time is really meant for establishing the relationship and then getting to, as I called it before, the heart of the big four, right? Exploring, here's an example of a worksheet we would use. Exploring the areas that the individual would be interested in receiving support, and then talking about who would be good supporters for those areas. A decision maker, I apologize, I live right near the train, so you're going to hear that every once in a while. A decision maker can choose multiple supporters for the same area, right? They can choose the same supporter for multiple areas, okay? I've seen supported decision-making agreements where there are as many as maybe 12 or 13 supporters written into an agreement. And then there have been agreements where there are only 2 or 3. We encourage decision makers to have more than one supporter. Again, the whole vulnerability thing and having more eyes and ears on an individual and using various people's expertise and having different people to play off of. Imagine having only one friend that you went to for advice and counsel all the time. That's a big load for any one person, right? Think about that. All right, so which areas, who will the supporters be, the kinds of support, again, the mapping of the kinds of decisions. You saw those nice slides before, and again, the logistics of how the support's going to happen. So that's phase one. Phase one usually takes about 6 meetings. At the end of phase one, the decision maker has a pretty well filled out, what we call Big Four chart. This is a little piece of it that you see over here on the right-hand side of my screen. And at that point, the facilitator and the decision maker make a plan to reach out to the prospective supporters. I say prospective supporters because not every person that the decision maker has identified as a supporter will necessarily want to be a supporter, okay? Sometimes people choose their teachers, and some teachers have said yes. And other people don't respond or say thank you. I think this is a great project. I don't have the time or the wherewithal to be a supporter. I had a situation with the decision maker where he had chosen his brothers, 2 of his brothers, and a bunch of cousins, etc. And they all came to a first meeting together, and for me to educate them about supported decision making. After which one of the brothers emailed me and said, I just want to be his brother. I love him, but I don't want to be written into an agreement. Fair enough, right? Okay, so this is phase one, going on to phase two. What happens in phase two? Well, so here's a picture of people gathering with the decision maker. Here's the facilitator. Here's the mom, various other possible supporters. These were simulations we did when we were at the Silberman School of Social Work at Hunter. So we made some training videos. So what happens here in phase two? Well, the facilitator is responsible, along with the decision maker, for inviting the supporters to come to the table, learn about supported decision making. The facilitator will explain what supported decision making is about and why you as decision maker want to do it. The other big important part in phase two, in addition to educating about supported decision making, just like I'm hopefully doing today, will be to help prospective supporters to begin to reposition from parent, caregiver, friend, counselor, whatever, into being a supporter. Being a supporter is a decidedly different role, right? It's a human kind of reaction when something goes wrong. Remember the example of my daughter running out of money? It's a true story. It happens all the time. She lives independently, but she runs out of money. Her dad will want to Venmo her money, and I push back. I'm like, no, this is an important lesson for her. She's going to figure it out. Obviously, if she was in a crisis, that's another story. But in general, I'd rather support her learning than rescue her every time she runs out of money, right? All of us have a tendency to jump in and fix or want to fix or be the problem solver. So helping supporters to understand that the roles and responsibilities of being a supporter are quite different from that model. And it's really about, again, going back to the mapping of decision making, talking through, well, have you thought about your options? What would be the consequences if you decided on thus and such? All of those kinds of things. I'm always going to be a mom, I'm always going to love my kid, more than life. But putting on this hat allows her to be more autonomous and also empowers her to be a decision maker and build her own confidence in that process. So, okay. So phase 2 happens. Supporters are now on board. They gather and we begin to negotiate the contract, which is the supported decision-making agreement, all right? So the decision maker and the facilitator will talk again about the big 4. So again, I put some slides in here today in the hopes that I would also have some folks that maybe want to participate. So it's a little bit of a mix of an information session I would normally do for family members and for prospective decision makers. So some of the language here is like, you, decision maker, will talk to your supporters about your big 4. Your facilitator will help you write down your big 4 into a supported decision-making agreement or an SDMA that you and your supporters can sign. Okay, so here's a picture of a facilitator, a decision maker, mom, and some other supporters here with the decision maker filling out paperwork to sign a supported decision-making agreement. This process also takes a couple of meetings because new information is going to get learned. So so I'm anticipating questions now in the sense that parents can also be thinking, oh, wait a minute. So if there's so much time spent between the facilitator and the decision maker one-on-one, I'm the mom and I hope I get chosen as a supporter. I'm assuming I will be. Rest assured, most decision makers choose their parents or parent as one of their supporters, but they'll also choose others, okay? So you might be one of 6 or 8, or in some cases 12, right? In phase 3, it's an opportunity for everyone to come together and for new information to be learned from the whole team, right? So it's no longer, so the facilitator's job becomes much more dynamic, right? Where he or she's learning and hearing from different people, checking in always with the decision maker to make sure that the decision maker is still driving this process, right? That it goes through that individual. The nothing about me without me concept. So there's usually 2-3 meetings in this process, and then the facilitator can begin to draft an agreement. Bring it back to the table. Everyone looks at it again. Every facilitator also checks in after every meeting with their mentor. Every facilitator is mentored. I've done both. I've served in both roles. I love doing both. I learn a lot as a mentor from other facilitators, as well as, actually working with the decision makers. Here's an example here's a template of what the agreement would look like. The decision maker's name would go here. I could try to make this a little bigger so you can see it better. Nope, it won't let me do that. Okay, so that was the previous page. I'll read some of the second page here. This is the page 2 of the agreement, and this is so again, this is written with the DM in mind. It's your SDMA, right? Understand what it's all about At the end of, so when everybody's ready to sign the agreement, the decision maker signs, checks off these boxes, or in the case of somebody who cannot write, sometimes makes a mark or a stamp at the bottom. I'll read them out loud in case you can't see them. So the decision maker, or with help or alone, will read, I have freely completed the SDM&Y facilitation process. I want supporters to help me make choices, help me make decisions, sorry. My supporters cannot make decisions for me. I can end this agreement at any time. I can change this agreement at any time. I can change my supporters at any time. My supporters can quit at any time. I will let my supporters know about major changes I make to the agreement and get their agreement on the changes if needed. If needed, I will tell others about my agreement and any major changes I make to it. My favorite and most important, and this is very powerful when a decision maker reads this, only I am responsible for my decisions, even if I receive support in making those decisions. So that, in a nutshell, is what is the heart of the SDMA, right? So it's important to understand that, all right, so the decision maker is responsible for her or his decisions, even if they receive support. But a couple of lines up, right? The supporter, I'll let my supporter know if I want to make any changes. This document, this SDMA, is meant to be a fluid document to live with a person for the rest of their lives, hopefully. Person is going to change and grow. If you're talking about a 19-year-old versus a 29-year-old, that's a watershed period in any young person's life, neurotypical or otherwise. It's going to be a lot of growth. All the adaptive skills that have come into play in a person's life will continue to evolve and grow and change. Those skills will be reflected in the changes that will be made to the agreement. Sometimes supporters need to quit or resign for whatever reasons. People can't do it anymore, or new people come into a decision maker's life. So we want the agreement to reflect those modifications. Here's where the supporters would get designated. So the decision maker puts their name in here, supporters, and this part in here, they're who they are, where they reside. And you'll see the same language here that's reflected in the big four, gathering information. So here, sorry, I'll go back. Number one, the person will provide me support in the name of the area, which area is noted here, and the kinds of decision making that are valuable to the individual that you've worked through with the, I'm sorry, I'm struggling over my words now, gathering information, et cetera, will get reflected, sorry, here. So it's a real thing. Everything that you've done in the facilitation process then gets distilled and put into the agreement, which is really wonderful. I will also note that supported decision-making agreement, our supported decision-making agreement, the one we developed for New York, looks very much like a New York State Power of Attorney form. It's very formal looking. I'll talk a little bit about legislation a little bit later on, because I know that all of you were probably thinking about that. But let me just get through finishing up with slides on the agreement. So you just have a sense of what it looks like. Here's where the supporter will sign their agreement, and I'll read this out loud. Supporter number one says, I, so-and-so, residing at such and such a place. I have read and I understand the agreement. I agree that I will support. Actually, we've updated this language. So we now have language that says, I agree and I honor so-and-so's right to be a decision maker. I will not act as a substitute decision maker, and I will not exercise undue influence, and I will avoid conflicts of interest. So we've put the language of, I will honor the decision maker's right to make decisions. So this is outdated language. I should change the slide. So signing ceremony, here it is. I recognize and honor so-and-so's right to make his or his own decisions. by virtue of signing this agreement, I fully commit to support him in exercising that right. So that's the new language we've updated into the agreement. And these are pictures of real life agreements, signing ceremonies. These two guys, this fellow here and this fellow here, were the first in New York State to sign their agreements. They were young people from the Cook School, downtown Manhattan. And you can see how proud they are. Andrew up here is somebody I would call an ambassador for supported decision-making, New York. We've invited him to do various presentations with us. I did an information session recently for students and alums at the Cook School, and Andrew and another decision maker were there to talk about their experience in supported decision-making and how they're using their agreements now. So you'll see stories about them on the website as well. So once you've signed your agreement, use it to navigate everyday life, right? Picture of some of the pilots around the world that are going on. Not all the states are listed here, but there are now 10 states in the country that have legalized, have statute for supported decision-making. I don't know, did I mention this? That in New York State, so OPWDD approved principles for legislation for supported decision-making. Kristen Booth Glenn, our project director, former surrogate judge of New York, created the principles for legislation. OPW approved them. They were sent off and were reviewed during the last legislative session in June. The bill passed the state Senate, did not make it through the assembly this first time around. As you know, there are many, many things going on in Albany right now and have been. So hopefully in the next session, that's also, as I said, our big push for this year is to push for legislation for SDM in New York. So the SDMAs that are currently have been made and will be made in the next months will be grandparented in. I've learned grandparented from Chris Glenn. I don't say grandfathered anymore, grandparented in. And now I want to take a moment and show you a quick video on supported decision-making. We did a series of videos for in collaboration with Disability Rights New York, DRNY. We did these last summer, and you'll find them on our website. So here's a picture, just time check. Oh, we got time. This is a picture, you can see this, yes, JC? Yeah, okay. It's a picture of our website. If you're interested in more about legislation, you can find out a whole lot about us. Legislation, there's a whole section on legislation here. Lots and lots of resources. We also have, if you click here, you'll get a lot of, so we essentially have two websites, one for parents, one that looks like this, and then one that's more for legislators. So there's a whole section for decision makers. Okay, you can learn about choosing supporters, making plans, etc. All right, so I just wanted to give you a quick look at that. I'm going to go back to this website. If you put in sdmny.org, you'll come to this website.
And we'll be sure to include the website into the follow-up email.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'm going to direct us right now to the, you know what happens is our face is getting in the way of me moving forward when I'm sharing the screen. So I'm going to the video under resources. And I am going to show you, when this loads, supported decision-making is, so we have a lot of videos. There's one that might be of particular interest, supported decision-making and transition age youth. I encourage you to watch that. Knowing I have a mixed audience today, I'm going to show the one supported decision-making is for everyone. I'm just making a choice to show that one. We'll watch it with closed captions as well. They are in English. I apologize. I don't have it in Spanish here. So let me wait 1 second. Make this full screen. Sound is okay, JC?
Supported decision-making is the process by which people with intellectual and developmental disabilities make their own decisions with the support of trusted people in their lives called supporters. It also allows them to retain all of their legal and civil rights. The Supported Decision-Making New York pilot project has shown that supported decision-making works in a variety of different ways for people of all ages, races, and ethnicities, regardless of their disabilities. Here are just a few. Ganesh is a decision maker who lives with his parents in Queens. He has studied business and worked in data entry and bookkeeping. When possible, he volunteers at Queens Community House. Ganesh plays classical piano and cooks all types of Indian food. His mother, Meena, who is from Tamil Nadu in southern India, joined him to talk about supported decision making.
It will help me to get all the inputs from others that I can make on my own. Like decisions about what school is going to help me with my job search, and then I can make the decisions on my own.
When Ganesh was little, when he was 18, we just took the guardianship because we had no idea how independent and able he would be when he reached that age. And then I heard about the supported decision making, and it's a very good fit for him because he's quite capable of making a lot of decisions. But it is good for him to get input from some other people.
Ella is a 24-year-old decision maker who lives in Troy, New York. She works at the Diamond Hill Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. She also volunteers with people with disabilities using her 5 rehabilitation horses.
It's important to me to be able to identify the people that I have for supported decision making and what part they take in the process. It's also important to me that I make my own decisions and not have somebody else make them for me.
Gerald is an LGBTQ activist who lives with a roommate in a residence in Harlem run by ADAPT Community Network. He first heard about supported decision-making at an information session given by SDMNY at a Self-Advocacy Association of New York Regional Conference.
What attracted you to supported decision? What made you interested in doing it?
He said it's about him making his own decisions. That's what you said?
And why do you think having a supported decision-making agreement is important for people who might need support communicating their decisions to others?
Because they hear you? Hear him in his words.
Harvey is 66 and works part-time as an office assistant at JobPath and is also a member of the Outside Voices Theater Group. In 1993, Harvey and his wife, who is now deceased, adopted a baby with Down syndrome, Samantha. Samantha is now 17 and lives with a foster parent in the Bronx, but Harvey is very much involved in her life.
So Harvey, you've been managing pretty much on your own for many years.
Yeah.
What made you decide to do supported decision making?
I figured it's very good. You know, like many times, you know, people need help with making decisions. They won't, because some of them are very difficult to make and others are easier.
And are there any kind of specific decisions that you were interested in getting support with now and in the future?
Like medical decisions. You know, like like for either for myself or for Samantha. You know, because you know that if Samantha will undergo any kind of major medical procedure.
How does that make you feel?
Feel good and comfortable that I'm doing something that is responsible.
Ernest and Essie are in their 70s and live in a group home in Brooklyn run by Adapt Community Network. Ernest is a survivor of an institution in Maryland and has written a wonderful biography. He and Essie are active advocates for the rights of people with disabilities.
Can you tell me, when did you guys get married? Can you tell me what you said to him, Essie? Do you think it's ever too late to do supported decision making?
Angel is 35 years old and lives at family residences and essential enterprises in Huntington. She is a Special Olympics weightlifter who was recently featured in a Special Olympics video to encourage exercise during the pandemic. What is the difference between a coach and a supporter?
Coach tells you, all right, guys, give me 50 more reps to that bar, and he's pushing you to push the limit to become an athlete. And then to become a supporter is to guiding you where are you going, places, in a job, and go shopping, make sure your apartment is clean, and make sure she guides me. Live my own life as an adult. That's what a supporter is.
Maria is the grandmother of decision maker Joshua, and they live together in Queens. She had this to say about the effect that supported decision making has had on Joshua.
Recomiendo por la sencilla razón de que yo he visto los cambios en él. Él ya me habla de proyectos que él tiene a largo plazo. Él piensa en el futuro, ¿no? Entonces, sí recomiendo. Este programa es de lo mejor.
Supported decision-making is being used successfully to promote autonomy, self-determination, and inclusion for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities around the world. And it is no different here in New York State with its incredible diversity.
Supported decision-making എല്ലാവർക്കും നല്ലത്.
Decision-making is for everybody.
That was a great video, John. Thank you so much.
Whoops, now how do I shut it off? Hang on. Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm glad. I hope people enjoyed it. I just have a little bit more to get through and then we can open it up. I see it's 11:30. And if I could just finish up a little bit of my section of it, and then we'll have lots of time for
questions. Yes.
Questions. Yeah. Are you seeing the screen again?
I see it.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. So yeah, I kind of forgot what was it there. This is it basically. So you can visit our website. Here it is. If anybody wants to take a screenshot, I'll leave this up for a second. And I know that JC is going to add that to the link as well with the recording. But there's lots and lots and lots of information on the website, including a few other videos. As I mentioned, the transition age youth one is really terrific. And then the other one of why supported decision making, why SDM, why would you do it? I encourage you to watch the other two as well. And again, if you're interested in signing up to participate, JC, I'm sure will include my information. We are currently signing up some decision makers to participate. And time is of the essence because our project ends, as I said, in March. So if decision makers want to start, there's still plenty of time. We used to say it takes about a year to get through the process, but now because more and more people are meeting remotely, I tend to meet with my decision maker that I'm working with right now every 2 to 3 weeks. So as I said, the phase 1 process takes about 6 meetings. Phase 2, when you're reaching out to supporters, takes a couple of meetings. And then the final phase 3 of negotiating the contract takes another 3 to 4 meetings. So it can be done in less than a year. All right, so thank you very, very much for listening. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I appreciate your patience. I'm hoping that you do have some questions for me or comments, and I would love to open it up to the audience at this point, the attendees.
Yes, so please, if you have any questions, please go ahead and place those in the chat or in the Q&A box. I know I have a few questions as you were presenting, Joan. So thank you for that presentation. So to be clear, who's a good candidate for supported decision making? Is there like a certain profile or age requirement? Who's good for this?
That's that is a good question. We get asked that a lot. We generally start work. We don't take folks that are younger than, say, 17 turning 18.
Okay.
That being a very critical age in terms of that that's when we get into the school to guardianship pipeline. That's when parents are often told, you got to get guardianship in order to have access to their educational records and so on and so forth, which is actually simply not true. There's a lot of misinformation about guardianship at that point. So it's a particularly vulnerable time. We encourage folks of transition age to try supported decision making. You can always do guardianship later if you really don't think this is going to work, but undoing guardianship is a lot harder. We do have people who have participated who are under guardianship, who have gone through or are going through a restoration of rights process. Disability Rights New York works with us, and they will take folks on pro bono to help people have a restoration of rights process and get back their rights. But having said that, so we've worked with folks as young as 17 and as old as, so Ernest and Essie, who you saw in the video, they're in their 70s.
Okay.
They'll actually be signing their agreement very soon. So which has been very cool. It's been the same facilitator working with each of them, but working separately because they're two different people. They have different,
You mentioned pro bono with
Disability Rights New York.
New York. Is the supported decision making process also free or at cost? Are there any cost associated in signing up for this?
No, all of our facilitators are volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone through the training process. We've used MSW students, occupational therapy assistant students, special educators, people like myself who are in education or have been advocates for families. The hope, one of the things that's so great about OPWDD getting behind this is that facilitation will be a waiver, a fee-for-service provision under the Medicaid waiver. We actually do have a few folks who are self-directing, who are using their funds, so approximately $1,200 or so of their self-direction funds to work with some facilitators who are brokers. ostensibly they're getting paid. So yeah, so and that's really important, because otherwise there's no way to sustain this process. We're not going to be supported decision making in New York is we've got a time stop, a hard stop, but we want the process to be sustainable. I realize let me just say one other thing. There's going back a second, because you asked about a profile. So I answered the question about age. In terms of profile, again, we've had a lot of folks on the autism spectrum and various kinds of developmental disabilities. As you could see in the video, we have quite a diversity of people with CPs, people with intellectual disabilities, people with autism. So it's not any one profile. We don't even necessarily know the diagnosis or care about the diagnosis.
That's good. Just to clarify, CPs means cerebral palsy.
Sorry.
Those that don't know. Question, now, since you do say, I'm glad you mentioned that about eligibility, or you said diagnosis. Is there a certain qualifying IQ or evaluation that's required, or that would be ideal for this profile in terms of the severity of disability, intellectual disability?
No. And the reason being that if we were to run a pilot where we were self-selecting or evaluating and looking at, a certain IQ, for example, or a certain type person as an ideal candidate or an ideal fit, we would not be a viable project. I mean, the idea is that supported decision-making really is, to quote the famous video, for everyone, that regardless of IQ, in general, this works. Have we had a few people that have started the process and found that it doesn't work for them? Absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, there is an attrition rate. Not a big attrition rate, but it happens. And have there been situations where a particular facilitator hasn't worked well with a particular decision maker and we've made a switch? Yes, I try to match people up that I think will work well together with so I've done a lot of the signups with the decision maker, and I want to talk about that in a second. What's involved if people do want to take the next step. So people select us. They find out about us and they want in, which is really the way we want it. We feel this pilot should be run.
And you mentioned OPWDD. I'm glad you mentioned that. And it's great to hear that they're supporting this initiative. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exploring other alternatives to guardianship. So with that understanding, and now that you've said that, they're supporting it through self-direction, then some participants that do, decision makers, I guess is the word that you use, are OPWDD eligible then?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
Sure, some decision makers are OPWDD eligible.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Many of them are. Yeah, we have quite a few folks that are self-directing.
That's
or
great.
Just OPW eligible that are not, that haven't gone the self-direction route. That's right.
And just to be explicit, and SDMA NY supports also the supporters in completing the paperwork and all of that. Because I know, like, when it comes to guardianship, you're on your own. Like, there are very few organizations that even want to support filling that out. So I'm just curious if SDMNY is supportive of also supporting the paperwork.
Of course, yeah. The paperwork involves filling. So the SDMA, the supported decision-making agreement, the facilitator takes the first stab, if you will, at creating a draft. All right. So, and that draft is a composite or a compilation, I'm not sure which word is appropriate here, of many of the conversations that have taken place in meetings and have, been part of the whole Big Four chart and all the notes that have been written. That information gets distilled into the agreement. So you can have these very free-ranging, wonderful conversations as a facilitator in this process. The information in the agreement is going to look much more formal because we want third parties I'm glad we're getting here. We want third parties to actually accept these agreements, right? That's the whole point in having SDMAs legalized, that a person's capacity can't be questioned. Right? You have these agreements. I'm encouraging people to carry a snapshot of the attestation page of the agreement in their phones. And there's a one-pager that's an attachment to the SDMA that gives a nice overview on SDMNY. In fact, I want to make a note because we're constantly updating our information. And I just want to make sure. So as a coordinator, I'm always thinking this way. Anyway, so yeah, your question was, am I answering the question or am I going on?
Yes, you did. I mean, you support the supporter.
Right.
Decision maker to complete the paperwork.
And also I just want to say, this is what I also wanted to add, that we are in the process, we SDMNY, of also creating a manual for supporters.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that, yeah.
Great. Is there a training that a supporter would need to take or undergo in order to be a more effective supporter? Is there some sort of support to offer that to the supporter or a perspective?
There's a lot of information there's a lot of really great work that has been done in Australia on supported decision making for supporters. And they have a whole host of learning modules and information for supporters. So to get a little deeper into what I just said about working on a manual, we are developing, we're taking some of what they have already created, so we don't, there's no sense of recreating the wheel when there's information out there, and seeing what we can adapt for an American audience with the diversity that we have in New York that would be useful. So the manual will be like a series of with these videos, I mean, I've been talking for an hour, but showing that video speaks louder and clearer than in any words I can convey.
No, it's nice to hear the self-advocates, especially articulate their support. I'm glad you mentioned, like the diversity aspect, especially here in New York City. In terms of supporting an individual, perhaps somebody who isn't documented or a recently arrived immigrant, does that affect their ability to be a supporter or to participate in supported decision-making?
Not to my knowledge. I can't think of any reason why that person could not be a supporter. That would be a question for Chris Glenn, as as our former esteemed judge. And
sure, no.
That's a good question.
That would be a great. Yeah. And then for a supporter, is a supporter legally bound in any way or liable if something go awry or something like that? Okay.
No. Remember the clause also, I'm responsible for my decisions, even if I receive support in making decisions.
Sometimes when it comes to we think of the power of attorney or a health proxy that's necessary, are those instruments, those legal instruments, are they still needed in this process, as a part of this process, to whether complement it or support it even more or make it more effective in case there is a contingency plan, and one of the main supporters isn't present anymore for whatever reason?
I think that's a case-by-case basis. We have lots of folks who choose to have healthcare proxies. Some people choose to have powers of attorney. There's a section, I didn't show it, on the template, on the agreement, where we have a section for other instruments to be noted. So if a person has a power of attorney, they might check that box off. Or if they have a healthcare proxy, I mean, many of us, I know when I had my knee surgery, I filled out a healthcare proxy, right?
Sure.
Many of us have them. So they can be complements. Those are considered alternatives to guardianship, right? So the answer to that is yes, people have to really think about that for themselves. We're not going to, make powers of attorneys for people or healthcare proxies. We will, if a decision maker wants to sign a FERPA, the Free Education blah 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 Parent Act or something. I'm not sure, I'm always forgetting what it stands for, forgive me, but it's the to release papers for all of their education records, the FERPA form, because once a child's over 18, parents don't have access to those records.
Right.
They can sign that.
The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Yes.
I'm writing it down so I don't forget. Privacy Act. I knew parent wasn't right. Privacy Act, of course, that makes more sense. That and the HIPAA forms
Right.
for healthcare.
Great. I mean, those are the questions that I have. If there are any additional questions in the audience, please, we welcome them now. I guess, Joan, one question: how can parents, who don't have a child with a disability eligible by age, how can they support? Is there a way that they can support SDMA New York in their efforts? Is there something that we can do to support legislation? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, you said it only passed in the
Assembly.
Assembly.
I mean, the Senate, sorry, it passed in the Senate, not the Assembly. Mm-hmm. Yes. So what I would say right now is if you would like to be on our mailing list, please make sure that JC has all of your contact information. We can certainly put you on our good news. We do a Good News Friday blast every week. Highlights from Supported Decision Making New York. I'm happy if you would like to receive those notices. We can send you like samples of past ones we've done, celebrating our successes. It's also a great way to stay in touch with us and find out what's going on. So that's one thing. And then the other is to constantly check back to our website and see what's going on. What's the news, what's happening with legislation. So start to think about who your assembly members are and who you might reach out to talk about supported decision making. I'm part of a kayaking club in Yonkers, and I just met Shanae Williams, who she was running for city council. She missed it by a hair. She's a young woman. She's really terrific. And so I was, we paddle, and then we had a potluck the other night, and I'm talking to her about supported decision making. So use the people in your community, start talking about these efforts and what we're doing. What else did I want to say? Yeah, so those are the two big things. And you're also reminding me, we would love to do a story on Synergia this week. We, meaning Supported Decision Making New York, our good news for the week. And if you're comfortable, I'd love to, I guess we can't see you on video. So it'd just be a screenshot of me and Ray. If you're willing to come back, we can get you on the screen too. You were our hearty interpreter. Thank you so much for your services today, helping out.
That's right.
Do you mind if I grab your picture too? Okay. For the three of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan. And thank you so much, everybody, for attending today and for hopefully learning so much more about this process that we really don't hear as much as we should about. So yes, thank you, Joan, for being here again. We'll be sure to share the PowerPoint and the recording to this presentation. And if you have any questions, you'll have Joan's contact information as well as a link to the Supported Decision Making website. I want to say on behalf of Synergia, if you have any other questions or concerns or think that you can benefit from our intake services, and please don't hesitate to call us. We have our intake line available at 212-643-2840, and I'll be including that in the information. Lastly, Friday, I will be conducting a webinar on cultivating leadership and parent engagement. It will be in Spanish. However, it's just thinking that, we're advocates by nature, and it takes a village to raise a child with a disability. But parent leadership and engagement requires increasing our advocacy effectiveness by honing on core competencies through the acquisition of knowledge and experience. So we'll lay the foundation for that and reviewing the 7 keystones to enhance advocacy effectiveness, teach you how this will ground you in telling your personal story and introduce you to ways to becoming more involved, not only in your child's education, but also how to tap into other parent leadership roles with your child's school community. So that'll be on Friday. We thank you so much for being here. And yes, thank you so much. I'm seeing the comments coming through. You're so welcome. We're so glad you could attend. There is a brief survey and I'll go ahead and activate that poll now. Joan, do you have any other final words?
I would just like to say, if anyone on here or after seeing the recording later on, once the link is sent, has more interest, yes, absolutely reach out to me. And I would just tell you what the next steps would be. If you have someone in your life that, or there is someone on the line that would like to participate, what that would involve is that we would have a meeting, a Zoom, with yourself, a parent, if that's appropriate. If not, that's fine. I would go over a little bit more in detail what the facilitation process would look like. It would be a meeting that would take about 40 minutes. That's it. You'd sign a consent form if you're not under guardianship, or an ASN form if you are. And then we'd get you signed up and assign you a facilitator. So I just wanted to add that.
Great.
And I want to just thank you once again, JC, for organizing and hosting this event. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll be in touch with you soon, Joan.
Okay,
thank you so much, everybody. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. We'll give you a few minutes early. And you can complete the survey that'll auto-populate on your screen whenever you close your window, or you can fill out the poll. You have a choice. There's more room to leave.